Yesterday we talked to Chip Patterson. We talk to Chip every Wednesday. He is the moderator. I call him the moderator of the Cover 3 podcast. It is, for me, I mean, my relationship with Chip might be the reason for this, but it's also the very best college football podcast. And don't you know we have another cast member, Danny Kannell, former Florida State superstar quarterback, joins us on the Adam Gold Show. Man, it's good to talk to you. How are you?
You too, Adam. What's going on, man? I hope you've had a fantastic summer. Thank you for the praise of the Cover 3 pod. We have a blast on there.
Yeah,
we pride ourselves on being one of the best out there, too. So thank you for saying that, man.
You guys are great.
It's good to catch up. Thank you.
And you are one who is willing and able to carry we'll call it a flag for the Atlantic Coast Conference. All right. Where is the ACC now? How big a deal is it that it looks like Clemson, with a lot of pressure on them, I think more pressure on them than there is on any team in the country. But if they come through and really contend all year, does the ACC's reputation get a lift?
I hope so. To be clear, I will carry the flag for the ACC, but I will not be an ACC shill.
Right.
Like, there are some people out there that, that the SEC is king no matter what. You will never hear them breathe a word of negativity about the SEC. I usually call it like I see it, and I do think it's a critical year for the ACC. I'm a little bit worried about some of the teams and getting two teams into the college football playoff like they did last year. I'm a little bit worried they could be a one big league, but I do think there's some teams and some programs that need to step up, and one of them, probably more so than others, is Clemson. Like, this is a team that was 0-3 against the SEC last year, right? They got smoked against Georgia. They lost to South Carolina at home, and they lost to Texas. Now, they beat SMU, and they got in, which allowed the ACC to get those two teams in the playoff. But I do like this squad, and I find myself rooting for Dabo Swinney because I like his philosophy. He's taken a lot of heat and criticism for not going to the portal and just loading up on talent, which they probably could. Now, he's loosened up a little bit. They got a few guys that I think can really contribute. But I like somebody who's trying to build a culture that, that preaches team over individual. So I find myself wanting that to work, but I also am recognizing they do have a roster that looks like it's ready to go against the biggest, schools in the country. They've got a couple guys on the defensive line that I think are first-round talents. Cade Klubnik, I'm a big fan of their quarterback. They have one of the best receiving corps in the country. So they've got the chops to go out there and make some noise, and we're about to find out because I mentioned the 0-3 streak against the SEC. You, I'm sure, are aware of the game they have against LSU in their backyard. Yep. Will be a huge opportunity for Clemson and the ACC to say, all right, our best can go against your best any day of the week.
Danny Kannell is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show, Cover 3 podcast, Sirius XM, at Danny Kannell on Twitter. I also think it's a big year for Mario Cristobal and Miami. Now, SMU's got an easier schedule, although they're non-conference. That Baylor game for SMU is going to be a big-time challenge at the start of the season. Miami's got Notre Dame to open. If Miami does something silly, and I think if Carson Beck is healthy and reverts to the Carson Beck of 2 seasons ago, maybe Miami's got something there. If Miami can win that game, how far does that go to changing the narrative?
Oh, it's big. I don't think it's as big as their game that they have, the 4th game of the season against the Florida Gators. Now, even saying that, see, this is what bothers me because last year Miami beat Florida 41-17 in Gainesville.
Yep.
And, it becomes an afterthought. Everybody's like, oh, Florida wasn't that good. But then Florida wins a couple games at the end of the season, and they get all this hype because they beat Ole Miss and LSU at home. And everybody's like, oh, Florida must be a great team. And they're like, well, that wasn't the same team that the Hurricanes beat. So it kind of you almost can't win in some of these arguments. But those are 2 massive opportunities for Miami to prove that this year is going to be a little bit different than others because Miami, still has not won an ACC championship, right? And it's got to be frustrating for Mario Cristobal, for Miami Hurricane fans, for the ACC commissioner, Jim Phillips, for thinking you were going to get a perennial national contender when they came into the league to somebody who hasn't been able to win a conference. It is pretty jarring even to think that could be possible. And you mentioned some of their pieces. I am not as sold on Carson Beck. I do worry about a couple things. One, he is coming off a major elbow surgery that we see happen in baseball all the time. We haven't really seen it too many times in baseball or in football, but the reports are that he looks great. I'm a little bit worried about what I saw last year on the field, but also what I heard from some of the Georgia players. And basically what I heard was nothing backing up their quarterback when he got hurt. His teammates at Georgia were almost celebrating like, hey, now we're gonna rally around our backup quarterback. And Georgia, by the way, they can keep anybody they want to. They were willing to let Carson Beck walk out that door. There's an intangible factor that I'm just curious. Does he have the leadership that a player like Cam Ward did last year, who was very clearly the alpha, the guy that Miami players were willing to run a wall through, at least on the offense side of the ball? The defense was a sieve, so it didn't carry over to that side of the ball. But I do think Miami has spent in the portal to put a roster out there that should be competitive. My fear for them is that when you have that type of program where you hire mercenaries, you have these hired guns, and I can say this from experience, when it doesn't go well, do they really care that much after they can't win the ACC or they can't make the playoffs? And I thought that's what happened with Florida State. They lose the opener. They're kind of shell-shocked. They lose the Boston College, and the next thing you know, they're kind of all playing for the paycheck, and then you're 2-10. And I'm not saying they'll be 2-10, but if they lose to Notre Dame, which they are an underdog, if they lose to Florida, they start the season 2-2. I just wonder, does that team get off the mat? Do they rebound? Do they still fight? Because they do have they have a tricky game against Florida State, which they should win. Florida State's a big question mark, but they've got Louisville. They have a road game against SMU. I just worry about the mentality of that team if it doesn't go well. I think they're a front-running team. If I knew they were going to beat Notre Dame, I like them against Florida State, and I like them to beat, right back in that ACC championship game playing against Clemson. But if they don't, I've got my concerns about them.
Let me ask you a quick question about the Florida State-Miami rivalry. And by the way, I spent a lot of we'll use an old newspaper term here. I spent a lot of column inches on this show saying, how come people are not talking about Miami versus Indiana for that? It wasn't a last at-large playoff spot, but Miami's only two losses last year were to Georgia Tech, in the who beat Florida State, should have beaten Georgia, and frankly, that loss, and then to a 10-win Syracuse team on the road in the season finale, and Miami was not even a discussion for a possibility for playoff. And I'm not necessarily advocating for them, but if you're going to advocate for Alabama with 3 losses, including a blowout loss at 500 Oklahoma, then we should have at least mentioned Miami in the conversation, especially with a couple of their wins. But that's last year, and we'll look ahead to this year. But let me ask you about your experience.
Trust me, I was right there with you on that argument, and people were kind of surprised. I'm a Florida State guy. Why would I make that case? I thought they got completely overlooked, and this is one thing that drives me nuts when we're supposed to talk about resumes. Your resume is supposed to be your complete body of work, but there is such a recency bias that it's such a flawed argument, because then they'll say, well, it's the best teams right now. Who is the best teams now? But if Notre Dame had lost to Northern Illinois in week 11, I don't think Notre Dame gets in the playoff. But the fact that they lost that game the second week of the season, they're able to win out.
Right.
Everyone forgets about that game. If Miami had started 1-2 against Georgia Tech and Syracuse and Wake Forest, let's say Wake Forest, there was only win, and then on the back end they started to beat teams like Louisville. They blew out Florida State. They blew out Duke. They had that 41-17 winning, and that's all you remembered. I think Miami would have had a much better case. It's just sort of a flaw of the system. But I think the lesson you learn is you can't lose 2 out of the last 3 games. Yeah. I don't care who you are. You just can't lose 2 out of your last 3.
No doubt about it. And I'm still surprised and we're going to see this with Penn State, although maybe a different animal than Indiana, that Indiana played nobody outside the league, had maybe the easiest conference schedule overall that we have ever seen from a Power 4 school. And it was like, oh, yeah, but they played so well against it. And I'm like, at some point, this is why I always argue that there's no mechanism in college football that really rewards a good non-conference schedule. And I'll bring up this stat. There were 10 teams in the Power 4 last year that did not play a non-conference game against a this year. There are 10 schools that will not play a Power 4 non-conference game. Six of them are from the Big Ten. Wake Forest and Ole Miss, who, by the way, Wake canceled a series with Ole Miss, are also on the list. Wake's the only ACC team. There are 11 that play 2 non-conference games against the Power 4. All 11 are from the ACC, and I keep saying, why? Why do we do this? It's at the expense. If you don't win the game, if you win the games, enough of them, that's fine. But if you don't, if you go 5-17 against that group, now you got a terrible league. Well, we got to stop scheduling all those games.
I agree. You have to. And Lincoln Riley took a bunch of heat for this, but the Big Ten coaches were actually. I mean, we just saw Kirk Cignetti in Indiana. They canceled a series with Virginia for crying out loud. Like, they canceled it. And he was like, you know what? We're just trying to schedule like the SEC teams are. And he's not wrong. And their schedule, once again, is a joke. By the way, go look at the non-conference games that the last 2 national champions played. Ohio State's non-conference this past year was a joke. The year before that, it was Michigan. Their non-conference was a joke. I'm talking like 3 blowouts. And guess who else? Penn State this year, their first 3 games are total cakewalks. They played Nevada, FIU, and Villanova. Now, I will make the argument for the Big Ten. They'll say, well, we played 9 conference games, right? That's their counter. And they're trying to make the SEC play 9 conference games. Do you want to fix it? Here's how you fix it, Adam. I have a couple different suggestions of what I could do, but you just make it a requirement that you have to play 10 Power 4 opponents to be eligible for the playoff. That's all you have to do. Just make it a requirement. And then we don't have to say, well, how many conference games do you play? I don't care how many you want to play against how many the ACC plays, how many the SEC. You just have to play 10 Power 4 opponents to be eligible for the playoffs. That'll fix the problem, because you might have a team like an Indiana who, when they scheduled those games last year, I don't think they thought they were a playoff team. They just wanted to get back on track, which I understand. Like, you want to build some goodwill. Well, that's all well and good, but if you want to be a playoff team, you've got to do 10 Power 4 games at minimum. So then they couldn't back out of a series versus Virginia. They would be, all right, you guys are in the big boys now. You want to play in the playoffs again, you have to play those Power 4 games. The best scheduling that I could imagine is when there is not a conference commissioner, a college football commissioner, and a committee or some sort of office that dictates the schedules for everybody, because I don't like how everybody can do their own thing and you can create rivalries and create these games that are sellable. Make it where, and this is all like a pipe dream because it's not going to happen, at least in the next 5 years, but I would actually love every Power 4 conference to play 8 conference games and then have 3 non-conference games. And if you're an ACC team, you play 1 non-con versus SEC, 1 non-con versus the Big 12, 1 non-con against the Big 10, and then you can play a group of 5 or an FCS or whoever you want in that 12th game. And then guess what? When we come compare those resumes at the end of the season, we have a lot of crossover games with other conferences. We can kind of start seeing how they stacked up against each other. And the resumes, which are so different, it really is comparing apples to oranges. They become a lot more like comparing apples to apples as opposed to what we have now.
No doubt about it. I heard you say that on the Cover 3 podcast. Final thing quickly for Danny Kannell, because I know you have places to be, and I appreciate your time at Danny Kannell on Twitter. What are your expectations for Bill Belichick in year 1?
Oh, my goodness. I wish I knew. I wish I knew, because I want it to work. Like, I think Bill Belichick is great for college football. And when he was hired, I saw a lot of people, criticizing it. Oh, this is going to be a disaster. And I was kind of like, no, this guy can coach. Like, he's a football coach. He can, he's got 6 rings. I mean, the guy is the best football coach we've ever seen. So I wanted it to work. And then I am worried about some of the off the field stuff. Like, it's very concerning, and like just the circus, the atmosphere that's been around them. But also, I look at their roster, and they've done a pretty good job in the portal, like rankings-wise. They have the 3rd best portal class in the ACC, so they've got a bunch of players coming. I don't know what to do with the quarterback. Gio Lopez had a pretty good year at South Alabama, but is the answer? I don't know. I tell you where I do think he has the edge, and I do think, like, in their opener against TCU, I would expect Bill Belichick to have a game plan that is going to throw off a quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, I played against him. I started against him. The one question I have is, because you want to do a lot of different things, because he's a genius mind. And he always put a lot on his defensive players. How do college players handle that? They don't have all day to go to the office and study film and study schemes and get all those different schemes implemented. So that's my one concern. Like, I don't know if this is like just a 7-5 team. I almost feel like it's boom or bust. Like, it either comes together and they're a 9-10 win scene, or it falls apart and it's a 4-5 team. And if you said, which way are you leaning? The off-season stuff, the stuff you're hearing, I kind of lean towards the bust this season, but I really hope I'm wrong, because I would love to see them competitive.
Danny Kannell, my friend. I appreciate your time, man. We'll check in again. Go hit him straight this afternoon.
All right. Appreciate it, Adam. We'll see you.
You got it. Danny Kannell here on the Adam Gold Show.